And, you know, I'm going to let Trevor kick it off, but we're so glad that you'd be here and share this time of Thursday. So Trevor, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Jason Ledlow, Mark West, Trevor Nelson here from HGA Fundraising. Mark and Jason have a ton of experience in the auctioneer space. That's something that we wanted. It's a question that comes up a lot, as a matter of fact, not just in the hybrid and virtual space that we've come out of course, but for live events. We get these questions all the time. So we thought, well, we might as well have a couple experts, obviously, discuss it just about how to hire the right auctioneer. Why, in a situation where you're trying to raise as much money as possible, it benefits you to hire an auctioneer. Why do these guys and gals charge the amounts that they do? What is a designation of a professional auctioneer? And quite frankly, at the end of the day, what do you want out of them to really, really squeeze your investment as much as possible? Once again, to raise as much money as you possibly can for your event. So this is an interesting topic for us. Of course, as always, chat function, Q&A function, please put all your questions. I'll be monitoring that the entire time. I am not an auctioneer, so I'll be helping these guys facilitate all of your questions and answer all of your questions. I do spend a lot of time with auctioneers, however, and so we could speak as long as we possibly, as much time as possible as we could about it, but we'll keep it under an hour. Please stay till the very end. We'll have a drawing for a winner of a travel item that you can use at your next event. And Jason's got some good slides and all that good stuff, and Mark's got some good experience share. And between the two of them and some questions, I think we'll get a lot out of this. So thanks everyone so much for joining us another week, of course. So hope that
and
helps.
We'll definitely be out of here within the hour. So we appreciate your time. We will be recording this, so you can get, if you want to review it. You know, and I just want to jump out and just say right off the bat, we're not soliciting for auction jobs. Okay. I want to tell you that for sure. Mark is a professional auctioneer as well, but that's not our intent. Our intent is just because Mark also works with auctioneers all over the country, helping them with HGA travel, just like Trevor. And so I want to make sure we just kind of keep this as a free flow, but we do have some stuff that I've been doing this for so long, and have done it. And I've kind of sat in every seat of some kind and hired a lot of auctioneers over the years. And so it's real and seen good, bad, and indifferent. So it's kind of an interesting, eclectic experience that you've got here. And so please, anytime you have a question, don't hesitate. I mean, we're going to do it at the end, but you don't have to wait for that at the end to ask your question. So we'll just hop right into it. And I hope you guys can see all the screens. Just go into gallery view. You can see all of us. You should be able to see all of us right there. And hiring an auctioneer, what in the world? Why would you want to do that in the first place? My gosh, you know, we're all high maintenance. We're all a pain in the rear end. Auctioneers are an eccentric, probably what I would say. Oh, keep your camera on, Mark. I don't want to. You don't have to go off. I want you to stay on here. But what I want to just, you know, it's like an entrepreneur on steroids. Very, very unique. And it's a very unique skill set to do that. Now, you know, when we ask what is an auctioneer and, you know, about hiring them, the question is, what is a professional auctioneer? What do you mean, Jason, when a professional auctioneer? So I'm going to give you a real generic. A professional auctioneer is somebody who gets paid to do this. They may be strictly a professional auctioneer because they just only do charity events. They may be a professional car auctioneer. They may have an auction company where they sell real estate and goods. They may be, you know, a cattle auctioneer. There's all kinds of difference. I mean, there used to, I don't even know that they do it anymore, but there was even tobacco auctioneer. So there's every kind of specialty within that. But what an auctioneer is a professional they're actually making a transfer of goods or services within a very brief period of time. I was a pro car auctioneer for 7 years. I did a factory auction. I sold 300 cars an hour at that pace. It's incredible how much you think about how much money gets transferred at that in that moment. You know, I like to say I've sold everything from dollar boxes of junk to multi-million-dollar airplanes, and I've had this incredible diverse experience. But when it comes to the charity world, it is a different thing. And I want to say that just because somebody, and I really want to make this clear, just because somebody is not a professional charity auctioneer doesn't mean that they won't do a fantastic job. And so, but a pro auctioneer is a pro auctioneer. Now, I did a lot of charity auctioneers. I really wasn't a pro at the time. I mean, if you consider being paid, because I was doing my entrepreneur thing in the telecom industry, and just, you know, as people would call me, and half the time I would donate my services because that was a way I could give back to my community. But I want you to understand that, you know, there is a skill, a set, a process to that. So whenever we talk about pro auctioneers, that's who we're talking about. I'm going to use the term Uncle Charlie. If anybody has an Uncle Charlie, please forgive me, because I don't mean this to be derogatory towards them, but we've all also seen where somebody shows up and they say, oh, you know, let's go get Uncle Charlie. He'll do it. He's a funny guy. Big difference between somebody being a funny guy with 2 or 3 people and getting up in front of a crowd and having to keep track of numbers, keep track of bids, being able to read body language. I mean, Mark, tell me, you know, why don't you talk about what you see that, you know, some of the skills that happen that professional auctioneers bring to the table that maybe somebody who's not a pro does?
Well, just like you said, you know, being able to read the room, understanding the body language, understanding a little bit about bidder psychology, and how to get the most money for your client. An auction, or a non-professional, they may have done, you know, they may do these all the time. I've heard of them. They I don't understand why, but they'll travel all over the state doing benefit auctions for free, but they don't have any skin in the game. And what I mean by that is, if they screw up your auction, your one night for raising money, they're not out anything because you weren't paying them. So with a professional, they want to come back the next year and the year after that. And so they're going to work very, very hard for you in raising money. And it's not just the auctioneer part of the things too. There's doing the live ask and being able to execute that at a high level, and making an appeal to people to just donate. And, you know, the funny guy isn't always able to do that.
You know, I think that you bring up a couple of really good points. One is that, you know, there are definitely people that do it for free. There was a guy that was in Oklahoma City, or here in Oklahoma for a long time, did lots of charity auctions for free. Did a great job. That was just his way of giving back to the community. But he wasn't necessarily the person that was, you know, he was a trained auctioneer. So what he did, he was a professional, but he did that in the charitable space because that's what he wanted to do in his community. The same thing is, maybe you're in a small community, you know, where I grew up. Well, every charitable auction was done by the same guy because that was his, I mean, he knew everybody. And so he was a professional auctioneer, and that was a way he could give back to the community. You know, as we go thinking about what that pro is, so keep that in mind whenever you're going to hire somebody. And going on to the next, what kind of event are you having? One of the things that I think that gets missed a lot whenever somebody's going and getting an auctioneer, they only think, well, I've got to hire an auctioneer. And so they go, well, hey, I heard that Mark's an auctioneer, so maybe I'm gonna go get him. What kind of auction are you doing? I can tell you, in every other industry, if it's professional car auctioneers, car auction, these people are pro car auctioneers. They understand the automobile industry. They have worked from the ground up. Maybe they started on the floor and they worked their way through the auctions. You know, if everybody sees these auctions like the Barrett-Jackson, those guys and men and women who do the Barrett-Jackson. And so whenever I say auctioneer, if I say guys, I'm talking about men and women, because they're phenomenal women auctioneers. They are the very top of the profession. They are the best of the best. And so, you know, whenever you're doing a car auction, you don't say, well, I'm going to go get this guy. And I learned this. He's been doing mini storage auctions for the past 10 years, and I'm going to go get him. They don't do that. They make sure that they go and get the very best people that are doing it. But at the same time, just because that's what they are. They're a pro car auctioneer doesn't mean that they can't do charity auctions as well. I told Mark this, I was using this for an example, and I'm not going to try to say anybody's name or anything, but in this case, I'll mention this guy. He is the best auctioneer I've ever seen in my life. And I've been around a lot. His name's Shane Ratliff, Chicago, Illinois. He is the best car auctioneer I've ever seen. But if I was selling anything else and I had a chance to have him on the microphone, I would do it all day long because he is that good. He is just in the, top 1% of 1%. He's just a phenomenal bid caller. But at the same time, if I need somebody who's going to really have experience share, who's going to come and help us build the auction, help us, plan the auction, get the fundraising in place, he's probably not the guy I'm going to call because that's not what he does. So always think about what is it that I need? And I just want to pop, what kind of event are you having? Are you having a live event, a hybrid event, or a virtual event? If you're having a virtual event only, and you go get an auctioneer that is not used to looking at the camera, you're going to have a really hard time. They're going to be uncomfortable, have a hard time because there's a big difference. There's a skill that goes with looking at a camera, being able to facilitate and reach out to somebody who's not there. Because Mark will tell you, being in front of a crowd is a whole lot different than being in front of a camera, just like we are right now. And there's nothing more exciting than being in front of a crowd of people, if they're all sitting there paying attention to you. It's a lot of energy versus doing this. So keep those things in mind too. How much are you wanting to raise? If you're trying to raise $15,000 and the guy that you went and got, he's got a $10,000 fee, that math doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
That may be a little overshooting about what you need. However, Mark and I were talking about this before. You start talking about, like, let's say we're just going to have a little simple pie auction. We're having a pie auction. We're doing a fundraiser at the school and we're going to do that. Mark, you'd agree. We've seen some pie auctions that brought a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, not thousands of dollars, like $25,000. Pies bringing $1,500, $2,000. And that was because the professional auctioneer in the room knew how to read people. He understood that they were there. He could convey that mission and be the ambassador for the group and turn that little pie that Sally Mae made into, $1,500. Whereas maybe somebody that didn't understand that deal, Uncle Charlie gets up there and he's selling it for $75 or $100 because he starts at $5 and who give 5, 10, 20, 5, 6. I mean, there's a lot goes into it. So back to the body language of what that is. So really, depending on what kind of event you're having, make sure that your auctioneer, the person you're talking to, has experience within that specific thing. If you're doing a virtual event and they don't have any, it's not going to be the same thing. So do it. What do you want out of your auctioneer? I have seen, this is just in my experience, and Mark, I'd love to hear your take on this. If you just say, well, we need an auctioneer for our event, are you available? You need to give more information and ask that, because, I see Mark at an event and, he comes and does a phenomenal job and he raised all this money and boy, did really well. But then, I call him up and, hey, Mark, are you available to come do my auction? It's on Thursday night, such and such. And that's all I ask him because I saw him and I thought he was good. What is it that he really provides? And how much do you charge? That's usually what the question we get, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you available? How much do you charge? Well, Mark comes back and says, well, I charge $10,000. And you go, whoa, hold on a minute. Oh, I can't afford that. Well, what is it that you want? I mean, do you want somebody who's going to help you, give you ideas, do planning sessions, sit in committee meetings with you, help you get on the phone and start, not get on the phone for you. I don't ever would never ask an auctioneer to do that. But what I'm saying is to help organize, the fundraising process. If that's what you're looking for, then that's a whole lot more than just showing up on Thursday night and picking up the microphone. However, on the flip side, if you've done all that, your crowd, you've got your money raised, you've got your items, everything set, and you just need to have your auctioneer show up and you need a bid caller, then understand that that's a different request. Those two things are different. Mark and I know some auctioneers, if they can't be a part of the planning process, they won't even, they're not going to show up and do it. That's just not what they do,
Yeah.
because they only have so much time, so many events that they can do. And so they maximize that opportunity for them. And, so don't be offended when they come at that price with you, because it just depends on what you're doing. But it may be saying, hey, it's Thursday night, all I need you to do is show up and auction. They may give you a different price, and we'll talk about pricing here in just a second. But Mark, what do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah. And I know a lot of auctioneers, myself included, we'll give different options when somebody asks about availability and that. And and an option would be, well, do you need me to just show up and bid call and maybe do a little MC work, or are you looking for more than that? So your auctioneer should be asking those questions of you, and that's what you need to really think about is what exactly do you want them to do? Because there is a big difference in just showing up the night of the event versus helping you 6 months out or a year out with all the planning. And there can be a big difference in price for that.
It really is. And, there's, and like I said, we'll get into the pricing, but really understanding what it is that you're looking for. I've done plenty of events where, we start off one thing, where they really wanted, that engagement, that seeing, but then they never, pretty much what they wanted was me to show up and hold the microphone, because they've got everything else taken care of. And so understand that, having that open dialogue with your auctioneer, whoever they are, when you're talking to them and getting them, is it something? Personality takes place. There's so many factors that, most of the stuff that I've done in my entire life has all been referral. It's really funny that in doing this for 30 years, Mark, I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me to bid call. Hey, would you auction for us? And let's hear it and make sure that you really can do this. I don't think it's ever happened. So it's a really interesting thing about what people ask, because let me tell you something, it's kind of important. You put all, you've done all the work, you've got the right people in the room, you've got some great items, you've got all this stuff. And then, you get to the auctioneer part and you go and and this is something I'll just tell you, auctioneers talk about this all the time. You pay for the food, you pay for the event hall, you pay for the entertainment, you pay for all this other stuff. And then you try to go get somebody for free.
Yeah.
And it really,
the only thing in your event that makes you money.
Yeah. It's and it does make a difference. I mean, somebody says, well, man, we had a fantastic event and we did all this. I'm telling you, if you bring a professional in, they will probably get you exponentially more money. Yeah. It's just because of all the experience that they bring. Yeah. So, what do you want? Really ask that question, ask your committee, talk to them about saying, what is it that we need our auctioneer to do? Do we need him to come in and help us with this? Are we looking for that fundraising professional? Or are we looking for somebody that's going to hold the microphone? Do you need additional services or just a bid caller? Which really, we've answered that, but that's what that is. What am I looking for? Because a lot of auctioneers, like I said, they, especially in the charity space, they have a lot of experience to help you get more money. They'll talk to you about things like making those asks beforehand, getting, who to ask, doing a people exercise. Mark's, I know does this with organizations where they sit down and just go through and say, okay, who do we know that can write a check for $10,000? Who do we know that can fill a table up with people that'll come spend money? And who do we know that has special access? And then we can use those things to start building our event. The other skill set I would say is selling consignment. I will tell you right up front, and that, we offer trips for consignment, but I can tell you as an auctioneer, young auctioneer, I would show up, didn't have a clue. They'd say, hey, we need, this is $2,000 is this is the minimum bid on this. Well, that's what they paid for the item. Well, I sell it for $2,000 and think I've done great. And they didn't make any money because they didn't tell me. They just said, well, we've just got to bring, because sometimes you'll have somebody that donates a house in some place and they'll say, hey, this was a donated, but he said, the donor said it has to bring $2,000 or they won't sell it. And it's just because they want to keep the value up and they want to do that. And Trevor's got something to add. So come on in here,
Yeah,
brother.
Bill, speak to that from your experience, both of you guys, from your experience. It doesn't have to be with our item or anything like that, but you just said a really common theme that you and I discuss all the time, and Mark too. It's that you tell somebody, an auctioneer, professional, what have you, he or she, you know, that the item is a $2,000 item. However, let's just say you could sell 10 of them. You know, what's the right way to go about that actually? Because that's something that you need to ask your auctioneer, of course, if you're going to be hiring. You need to sell multiples
you know, just
and
a
how,
real simple.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
just ask
Go ahead.
them, hey, we're going to have
Yeah.
some consignment in this event. You know,
Yeah.
if you already do, or maybe you haven't, but they'll, and auctioneers a lot of times will help bring that in and to talk about that. Ask them, have you sold consignment? Do you have experience selling consignment? Now you're going to get all kinds of opinions. There's some auctioneers that say, yes, but I don't believe in consignment. I don't think you need to do that. Well, in this day and time, sometimes you have to do it. And I'm not, I'm doing an event on Friday night and there's no consignment at all, but they've got 4 trips that have private jets, with them and all these dinners. And they did a really good job before the event. So they didn't need to do it, but you got asking them those questions. What is it that you have? What can you do? Can you sell multiples? Because that's a whole skill set in itself, making sure that they've got those bidders identified, when to stop, so you
Yes.
can sell multiple events, because maybe I can go get another 500 for that one item. But if I sold 2 of them, the organization makes an additional 2,000. So those are really important questions to ask and talk to your auctioneer about. So,
And that's where it's important to have someone who's experienced doing this, because if you just go get the local auctioneer who sells cars or cattle or antiques, they're used to driving the price up as high as they can get it and selling one.
Yeah.
And in a charity event, with consignment, one of the real powers of consignment is being able to sell multiples. So you don't want them to drive it up and get the highest price they can and sell one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you might make $2,000 off the one they sold, but if they had stopped $500 sooner, they might have sold 3 and you'd made $4,500 instead of $2,000.
I can tell you exactly, to your point. Amy Myers, one of our friends that's on here all the time with us, she with MDA, she said specifically, we had an auction, we had an event, we could pass this out multiple times. We wanted to do it. It was the Cabo Caribbean craze that we do. They wanted to do it multiple times. The auctioneer forgot, went out, sold it for $4,000, and which was good money, but she was expecting, the point was they wanted to sell it 10 times and make $10,000 as opposed to just making 2. So those are really things that you've got to think about whenever you're doing it, and make sure. And, and I don't want to pencil anybody in one place or another just because they do a car auction or they do a cattle auction or something like that. Doesn't mean that they can't do it, but you've got to be really clear. And that's how you get more out of your auctioneers: communication, almost to the redundant point. And there's some auctioneers go, yeah, I got it. I used to do that. Somebody would call and say, hey, we've got all of our items. Do you want to see the list? Nah, don't need to see it. I can see that night. 20 years ago, that's what I did, because I was a good bid caller and I could show up and do a good job. But I realize now, experience, being behind me, learning that I can help a lot more if I understand what the mission is, if I understand, what the item, the auction, the setup is. And maybe I can make some, tell them, hey, why don't we move this item up to number 1, this item to number 2, and leave everything else alone? And just, it all matters. Merchandising is what we call it, but all that stuff matters. So those are things just to talk to your auctioneer, and you can ask those questions before you hire them to find out if they know. And you're going to find out real quick if they want to get in there and work with you.
Let me interject right here too, along with additional services, is professional ringmen. Having a professional ringman working your event, you will raise many times more than what you pay them. because they are professional sellers. And especially if you're trying to sell multiples of an item, they're going to be out there in the crowd, working that crowd, and they will get you those additional buyers. And I
think that you're so on point on that. When they're a professional, a ringman, somebody who does it for a living, somebody who's done it multiple times, or at least the auctioneer, they're working that with them. They have a comfort level getting out there. There's a lot of people that say, oh yeah, I'll get out there and do it. I'll hoop and holler and do all that stuff. And every time, with one exception, there's one exception in 30 years, I've seen this exception, they freeze. They're behind. They don't see anything. I see the bid way before they do. And they're just kind of maybe pointing something out, and they won't talk. You need somebody, and every auctioneer is different. Every auctioneer has their own style. Me, I love having great ringmen. I love people that like to get after it, get out there and go talk and get engaging. Some only want somebody to point that person out and go, yep, hell, yep. I want, because if I'm working the ring for Mark, I'm going to go to that buyer. I'm going to go right to him and say, Mr. Smith, hey, come on, let's go one more time. You're getting close. Let's do this.
Yeah.
It's for the kids. It's for the mission. And that's what they're going to be. They're going to be your, they're the ambassadors, and they create excitement, that hipping and yelling and popping, it really makes a difference. So don't let that, do that.
And,
go ahead, Mark.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, and expect to pay anywhere from $300 to $500 for each professional ringman at your event. You may only need two.
Mm-hmm.
Most events, unless you've got 700 people in the room, I would probably want at least 4 for something like that. But you will get your money back many times over.
Oh yeah, if you get one auctioneer, if he gets
using
one,
volunteers.
a lot of times if they get one additional bid on that item, they paid for themselves. So they definitely will make you money.
And the other thing they do is, I would say most professional ringmen are also auctioneers.
Mm-hmm.
So if something should happen to your auctioneer that night, you've got a backup there. Maybe your auctioneer is in a car accident on the way to the event, but you hired professional ringmen to be there as well. They know what's going on with your event. They can step in and not miss a beat.
Mm-hmm. So all those things being said, it is definitely don't be afraid to invest in this team, because that's really what you're doing, is you're getting an auction team. That auctioneer is going to be working through there, and
we have a question
that I'm gonna answer Shannon's question real quick. It says, we've been interviewing at Auctioneers for our 2022 event. The contract includes her staff. Is this typical for ringmen to be her employees? It really depends. So I don't know specifics on that, what that is, but they could be contract. They could, so it may be a staff. So maybe it just depends on what they're providing. Some auctioneers and auction teams, groups, companies, fundraisers, they'll bring in, clerks, different staff to help, with the check-in, check-out, things like that you're hiring. And then the ringman may be addition. It may be all included. I don't know the specifics, but Shannon, there's all kinds of different ways. You just have to ask those questions and say, what does this mean? What does this include? Does this include, are these going to be the ringmen? Is it not? So it really depends on that person, that company, how they're structured. For us, like for myself, I don't have any people that are full-time employees. They are just contract, but I take care of that. So what they'll do is the nonprofit will pay me, and then I will pay them. Now, some people have them write separate checks. It's all really depends upon what they want to do. So it's more than likely that's what it is. Yeah. So they're probably just contractors. I would, but I don't want to assume that, but that's just probably what it means. Any more questions that you guys have out of how to get more out of your auctioneers, please ask, because this is what we're here for. One of the last ones is, why do auctioneers I didn't spell that very well, did I? Auctioneers. Okay, I was sorry about that. But why do auctioneers charge so much? I I have been doing this for a long time, and they charge so much. I've got one statement to make, and I told somebody this a while back. Good auctioneers aren't cheap, and cheap auctioneers aren't good. And I mean that. I truly, truly mean that. Now, everybody is different. You've got to understand that some auctioneers, this is what they do. This is how they make their living. This is how they pay their mortgage, how they put their kids through school, how they, buy food, go on vacation. This is how they live their life. This is truly their profession. And, as such, they have time. So the only thing they can exchange for that is that time, that service that they're providing. And so they do charge more. There are some auctioneers that they have a job on their day off, and they may not charge as much. It's very, very fluid. Just because somebody charges $1,000 and somebody charges $5,000, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be better at $5,000. It depends on what you're getting. There are some that charge a whole lot more than that. And so, but why do they charge, what they do? Because that's the fee that they're willing to separate their time with. That's just really what it is. There's some auctioneers out there that charge 10 grand, take it or leave it. That's what it is. And, you got to understand that you're getting they're bringing. Most of the people that are doing that are bringing a lot to the table. I mean, they're really, really good. So, you get what you pay for to some degree, but not always. I donated mine for a long time. I would charge, but then I'd turn around and give the check back. But don't expect that. What I'm just saying, it is a professional, just like anything else. It's like attorneys. Some attorneys you go to and they charge you $200 an hour, and there's some that charge $1,000 an hour. Depends on what part of the country you're in. If you're hiring somebody in New York City, well, the cost of living is significantly different there than what it is in Oklahoma City. So they're going to charge more. Same thing. It becomes very regional, things like that. So I hope that kind of helps with that, because we get, Trevor and I, and Mark as well, we get asked to make referrals a lot. Yeah. They say, hey, can you refer somebody? I'm in Wisconsin, or I'm in different parts of the country. And the very first thing that I do is say, what kind of event are you having? What are you doing? What is it that you're looking for? Because if I don't ask that question and I just go and start throwing out names, it becomes really moot, because I don't know what they really want, because I know different auctioneers around the country that may be that. Maybe they just need a pure bid caller. They've got everything set up. So I'm sitting there going, okay, I know somebody that can show up, because that's kind of what they do. They need somebody who's going to show up and do the planning and help them through that part. They need somebody that's really good with a camera. They need somebody with a big personalities, because they're, it's kind of a raucous crowd and party atmosphere, and they need somebody that could be more stoic, and they need somebody that can tone it down and bring that deal. It's kind of like, Christie's auction. And I'm using that for an example. You hear them say 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. I've got 30,000. Do I hear 40? And they sell it. I have a friend of mine that did an auction here the other day, a while back. They had like 4 items. I've known him for a long time. We've been dear friends. He is not a professional auctioneer. And he said, hey, I'm going to do this. What coin is your? I said, don't try to be an auctioneer. Just say the numbers clearly and loudly, and just do it. And I said, then talk to people, have a conversation. So, and they raised $45,000, but that was a specific, because he knew everybody in the room. And so that's something that maybe a pro couldn't get, but that's what they wanted to do. So all those things come back around to, what is it that you really want? What is it that you're looking for? Which is going to go back into the fee. Because there are some phenomenal men and women out there that are raising a whole lot of money for organizations. They work really hard at it. Every auctioneer that I know that is a pro takes a lot of pride in it. And then also personality. Mark and I'm not going to use any names, but Mark and I, we've got a friend that we know. He is a world-class bid caller. I mean, he is good. But when it comes to the rest of it, that's not him. I mean, he doesn't, if it's pre-event stuff and going to go work the deal and set up that stuff, that is not his forte at all. But you put him behind the microphone and he can do magic. But on the other hand, I know some guys, some men and women, they're not the best bid callers. They're not going to win a bid calling contest. But boy, you talk about knowing how to get the money. They know how to read a crowd. They can sit there and look and go, sir, I know that it's you and me, and you're going to ready to do this. And, they'll get them to bid another $5,000 or donate $50,000 in the live ask because they can read that room and they really know and understand that. So it really depends on what you're looking for, what you're wanting. So I see we've got some questions because that's where we're at to the Q&A. And so,
Shannon had another question about if a nonprofit finds donors to paddle raise in advance of the auction and the auctioneer is on a percentage basis, do they receive that commission? That's a really interesting question. I've heard some different accounts of that. Shannon also said she runs numbers a lot. Is there a mathematical equation for the amount of the paddle raise, the live auction, and live games for the amount raised to come up with a goal? It would be my answer, of course, to something like that. But speak to that, and then we have a few others in Q&A as well, guys.
Go ahead, Mark. I'll let you take that first.
I'd say for the do they receive that as commission? I'd say everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
And you can build that into your contract in the beginning. What is and what is not part of the commission. If you know that you've got certain donors already coming in, then yeah, you could exclude that if you wanted to, and just make it part of what is raised that night in the room. Deduct what you knew was already coming in if you wanted to. That's all negotiable there.
I've never charged commission, a percentage, a commission on a benefit auction. So I don't really have any experience, but I would say that if you have those funds available, those things that you guys go and generate beforehand, let's say that you went and got somebody to start to be your opening bid for $25,000, that they would not receive part of that. That would be the understanding, because they didn't bring it. They didn't go get it. They didn't do it. It was just, you're looking for the night of. So if you have those designated gifts, that is a separate part. And that's how I would negotiate it. That's how I would expect to. One of the things that I've seen nonprofits do that I thought was really good or auctioneers do, is they did a performance bonus. They said, look, here's my fee. My fee is $2,500. However, if we get this much past your goal and everybody agrees to what that goal is, then I receive another $2,500 or whatever it is. You get them on that,
yes,
where they're going to push to get to those numbers to do that.
And I've done that. And I've never worked for a commission, but I've done that with the performance bonus. And it was all laid out in advance what counted towards that amount. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it's all negotiable.
Yeah. And I'm going to just say one of the things that has frustrated me in the past, and it's just kind of going on about paying auctioneers, is when you decide to contract with an auctioneer, pay it willingly, pay it excitedly, understand that you just, they gave themselves out there. I can tell you, as somebody who does this, being the ambassador, they're representing your organization. And that's one of the things that you need to expect out of them. I think no matter where they come from, that they're representing your organization. They work for you that night. And every professional auctioneer, and I'm saying professional auctioneer, cares. They truly do. They want you. They carry that emotional weight on their shoulders. He or she will, the reason somebody goes, man, they won't hurry up. They're dragging, they're going slow. It's not because they're going slow, because they're trying to get every dime they can, because they care and they want you to be successful. And there are some times where it's not easy. There are some nights where it is hard, where, things are unknown. You didn't quite have the right people in the room, and they're working their hardest to try to raise that extra money and to try to get it there. It does go back to, being ready, setting the table. The auctioneer is the one that's going to, you know, hit the home run for you, but you've got to set the field. You got to get the players all out there. You've got to get the right, you know, pitches, if you would, the items, and get that set up. And most of these professional auctioneers that are in the charity world will do that, will help you through that place if you'll let them. One of the things that I think that, you know, and we've got a few auctioneers on here, they would probably all agree. One of the things that is, you know, is frustrating, where we're talking to them about how to, you know, raise more money. That's what they're professionals at. They're professionals raising more money. And when they're doing 50 events a year, that's 50 events of experience share that they're bringing to you. 35, 10, whatever the number is. They're bringing that experience to the table that, you know, when they say, hey, we did this at a certain other event, or I saw this, and, you know, somebody wants to do a game and, you know, they've seen it just absolutely go sideways and didn't work out very well. But, you know, somebody on the committee's just, they're dying to do it. And it's just one too many, you know, and they say, yeah, I don't think I would do that. You might want to listen to them, because they're probably right. Because they're bringing that experience share to them. Not always, they're not infallible. I make just as many mistakes as after doing it for 30 years as I did after doing it for 3 days. So, you know, it's definitely a subjective, but if you'll think about those things and just going back through that list, you know, what is it that you want? What kind of event are you having? What do you expect out of your auctioneer? And then approach it from that standpoint. You're going to have a lot better, you know,
Experience.
you're going to have a better experience in the person that you
Better
hire.
event. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know what, there's going to be an auctioneer, and I just had this happen where somebody, they broke a record. They raised a record amount of money, never raised that much money. And somebody said, yeah, that he just didn't really care for the auctioneer all that much. This guy was raised, he got them the money that they got. And they're like, well, for whatever reason, it becomes a personal thing. So just overlook that stuff and remember the bottom line. Now, if the guy gets up there and tells dirty jokes and, you know, does something that he shouldn't do, well, okay, I get that. But still, they're there to do one thing and one thing only: raise money. And that's, I mean, that's at the end all be all, that's their goal. Now, well, they want to do it in a professional manner, and most of them will, but just keep all those things in mind. Any other questions, please?
So somebody had a question about how do you find an auctioneer? I would start with other organizations in your community that are having events. Go to them. Go and check out the auctioneer that they're having. You know, referrals are a great way to find an auctioneer for your event. But you know, you can also another thing I would look for is someone who has perhaps been through the benefit auction specialist training program that the National Auctioneer Association offers. Now, there are plenty of great fundraising auctioneers that have not been through that. So that's not something that you want to exclude people for. But if they have been through that program, it's about 40 hours worth of training. And that's definitely an indicator of someone who has invested in learning and understanding fundraising.
I was just looking, because I haven't looked at this in a while, but there's a link. If you go to NAA, I think is it NAA.com? If you go to faa.auctioneers.org, it's the National Auctioneers Association. And there's a place where you can go and look up, you know, benefit and charity auctioneers, and they'll give you ones that are members of the NAA there. Then that's not going to be the complete list, but I would say that's just a place that you can go. If you need some recommendations, give us a call. I'm not going to make any recommendations here, but we could talk to you. We do it all the time, where we can say, hey, here's a couple of people you ought to call and talk to in your area that can help you. And then it's up to you to go hire them. I mean, I'm not here to go tell you that this person's great or not great or anything else. It's on, you, and I'm not guaranteeing what they're going to do, but we're not going to send you somebody that's you're going to be ashamed of, I promise.
Your state auctioneer association is also a good place to go to look for someone. But I would start right in your community. Talk to other organizations, find out who they're using, and get recommendations. And then if you can, go attend an event, see how that auctioneer performs. If that's someone that you want to bring into your event or not.
I've had people come and that's what they did. They go and talk to somebody, and that's what they were there. They were there evaluating. I put that link in the chat so that way you guys could see it for the FAA, but also, I'm sorry, for the NAA, but also your state chapter is a great place to go to. Every state's got one, so you could go there and ask. But pick up the phone and call. If you know somebody else that's having a gala, that's having an event similar to yours, and a lot of professional auctioneers will travel. So just because you're in Oklahoma doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have an Oklahoma auctioneer that's available. Yeah. And it may not be that you don't have some. Maybe they're already booked, and you have to go out of state because have gavel will travel is a mantra of a lot of auctioneers, and so they don't mind being road warriors and doing that. Just understand that that's going to come with part of the price, part of the time, things like that. I mean, I've done auctions all over the country over the past years, as far as San Francisco. So you go, wow, in the world would somebody go all the way out there? Because there's great auctioneers right there in California, but it's just the way it happened with scheduling and things. Yeah. So don't be afraid to reach out to them. Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I think also like encapsulating a lot of what you said and what I've just pure observer over the last number of years now, and being around so many auctioneers over time and working with so many nonprofits as well. I think also we could probably say that there truly isn't always the one size fits all individual out there. Like you said, there's one person that's the greatest bid caller that you've ever seen, but they might, for lack of a better explanation, I'm just speaking candidly, might not have the best bedside manner with donors. Who knows, right? That's the reality, right? And every event is so different. I mean, there's going to be different themes to consider and different personalities and the mission. And oh my gosh, there's such a wide spectrum of events and missions and organizations. So finding the right personal or character fit for your event with whoever that person's team might be as well is a really, really important facet of this. We had a couple other questions though that came in, fellas. And one thing I wanted to touch base on as well, because we've mentioned this a few times because we've spoken about virtual events in the webinar series. We've spoken about hybrid events. Jason, there's a couple things that are already in my mind that you say pretty much every week about paying attention to the crowd in a hybrid event. These are really, really important things to consider. There are folks in attendance that are probably still going to have hybrid, if not virtual events on the webinar that are going to be watching this recording. Give me just some real solid bullet points for how to exercise the best plan of action with your auctioneer. That's in front of a camera. That might be in front of a camera exclusively or in front of a camera and a crowd.
So
help me with
being in front of a camera exclusively is different than being in front of a camera with a crowd. If you're doing a hybrid event, if your auction is hybrid, then your auctioneer is going to be talking to the crowd. They're going to be working the crowd first and the camera second. What I like to do, what we do with our clients is we set it up to where there's a confidence monitor. Some people call it confidence monitor, whatever you want to call it, but it's a screen that says for the bids that are online. So that way they can see it. And when that bid comes online, the auctioneer can look and see that and put that into their chant, and it just rolls along. So I'm sitting here, auctioning $1,000, $2,000, 3,000. I got 4,000 online. Now 5,000. Yes, sir. Now back to you online, sir. And then I'm looking in the camera and saying, Mr. West, it's just me and you, 5,000 to you. And they bid remotely, and then I'm back in the crowd. So those are some skills and things that you want to talk about. So when somebody asks that, but it's not necessarily just because they're doing it, they got to be standing in front of the camera, because you don't want that. I want somebody, who's going to be working the crowd, because that's where most of your money is going to come from, but also be able to come back to that monitor. And most professional auctioneers are going to be able to do that, especially at this point. If they've done any events at all, they're going to be able to do that. But it's a great question. And so, make sure that they understand you want them to play to the crowd, but don't forget the camera. And we have even done where we had the clerk, the person who's recording all the stuff, right next to the auctioneer, and is sitting there had their laptop pulled up so that way they could see the bids, and they would say, yeah, and they would bid for that person online. And so that way it just did it that simple. So there's ways that you can work around that. We're happy to, answer any questions, if you find yourself in that situation, to do that. So, I've actually been more nervous about this webinar than any of the past. This is number 22, because this is such a tough thing. And that's why people, auctioneers, I can tell you right now, auctioneers on the flip side, they're all sitting here going, well, why, I went to this nonprofit and, they wanted my fee in half, and they didn't want to pay me, and they went with the cheap guy and all this stuff. And, it's frustrating from them because everybody's trying to get on the same page, but having those candid conversations with people that you're talking to is very, very helpful. Don't rush through that process, because it's kind of like sometimes nonprofits, they go through the deal. Mark West, are you available? Nope. Mark West is booked. Jason, is he available? Nope. He's there. Trevor Nelson, he check. Okay. Got that done. I've checked the box. I'm moving on because I've got to get somebody, and they get scared to death because they're afraid they don't have one. And so they rush that process. So, spend a little time. Don't be afraid. And these folks that are pros understand that. They understand that this is, it's like an audition into some deal about their skills. They're used to making presentations and talking to them, and they understand that they're not going to get them all. And also, how are you guys going to get along? If I'm out here working and I come in and working with Mark, and it's kind of uncomfortable, and Mark and I are just, we're just not jiving, if you know what I'm saying, then that's okay. Take that as an indicator that maybe this is not the right pick.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because that's who, I'm working for him. Okay. I'm working for him. I'm not, I'm working for the organization.
Yeah.
And I'm representing them. So, and you've got to make sure that you keep that in mind. That's your ambassador. And I say this with a lot of respect to people, but if you've got some auctioneer that shows up and they're a slob, that may not be the thing you want to get. Do you want the cowboy? There's some auctioneers, they won't sell without, I wear my cowboy hat no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's okay. But just understand that's who you're hiring. There are some that, they've got the really cool vest, or they've got a sequin jacket, or they've got, the coat of many colors, whatever it is. But understand, you've got to have that conversation with them to say, I always ask, what is it you expect out of me? What presentation are you looking for on whenever I get up there? Do you want me in a tux? Do you want me in a suit? Do you want me to be more casual? Because sometimes they'll go, oh no, gosh, you come out in a tuxedo, you're going to scare everybody to death. Yep. They're thinking it's too formal. Let's tone it back. If you could just wear, I've worn boots, jeans, and a hat. So, we're playing a role, and it's, auctioneers hopefully are doing that and not saying, well, I always do, because they've got to have some flexibility as well. But you guys as hiring them need to give that information back to them. Say, I saw in the video that you have a cowboy hat on all the time. Is that something that you have to wear? It's okay. Ask the question. Yeah. If it offends them, maybe it fit. Okay. And it's funny because it is. Ask those uncomfortable questions and have the uncomfortable conversation early on. So that way there's no misunderstanding. The last thing in the world that anybody wants is for there to be a misunderstanding. Make sure that they give you an agreement that I'm going to be here on this date. Touch base with them, check in with them, follow up. Auctioneers, like I said earlier, they're entrepreneurs on steroids. That also means that they have the focus of a guppy, sometimes the attention span. So I missed an auction one time. Years ago, I missed. Was humiliating, embarrassed because I did it. I wound up doing that event for free for like the next 9 years, making up for it. So, and it was for a good friend of mine. So please don't think that you're, following through is really important, because sometimes life just happens. They didn't get on their calendar. Something changed. In this case, I just missed and messed up. So
we're wrapping up at the very end for last call for questions.
Yeah.
because we got a few
Yeah.
minutes.
You got a question?
No, I was just
No,
going to
we-
make sure, you know, there's a
Yep.
lot of stuff that talks about license and everything. That is true. You need to check that out. That was brought up by Tony. But at the same time, you know, I've also seen auctioneers go out there, you know, somebody else that's not an auctioneer, not a pro, and they wind up hiring somebody who doesn't have a license, and they go up there and do it and nothing ever happens. So, you know, you've got to do that. Just like the raffles, you need to check your own laws and make sure that you're doing those things. You know, in the state of Texas, it's the goofiest thing I've ever seen. There's nothing about charity auctioneers to be a Texas auctioneer. Mark will tell you, because he's licensed. It has nothing to do with being a professional bid caller, is there, Mark?
Nope.
Nothing. It's
Nope.
just, so but it is what it is. So you have to play by those rules.
You got to play by the rules. And I'll just say this real quick in closing on my part.
Mhm.
Get your auctioneer hired as early in the process as you can.
That's a great call.
Because dates are at a premium, especially this coming fall. Everybody is having an event this fall because they're making up for not having an event in the last year. So get your auctioneer locked in as soon as you can in the process.
Well, Mark, I couldn't have finished it out better than that. I think that was great. Thank you guys so much for being here and all the great input. Go ahead, Trevor.
No, there's a lot going on this fall. There's only so many dates. But hey, guys, quickly, I mean, we have 2 minutes left. Jason, you're going to announce a winner.
I am.
Everyone, any questions, we'll put the link for the NAA and all that on the recording email that we send out. Any questions, Trevor at HGA Fundraising, Jason at HGA Fundraising, Mark at HGA Fundraising. If you need referrals, some more experience share, please, we're very, very easy to reach and very quick to respond. You know, but also, does that mean, you know, there's only so many dates, but that also means you don't need to be married to Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays too, correct? So that's another, that's a whole other topic, of course.
Tuesdays are the new Saturday.
There you go. There you go. So I think that's something.
If you guys need a referral, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I would say Mark has a really extensive contact list of professional charity auctioneers around the country. And so can make some great recommendations. You know, we work with a lot of different men and women around the country. So absolutely happy to do that. Our winner is Shelby Johnson. Shelby Johnson.
All right.
All right. Right on.
You just won a trip to use at your next fundraiser. We'll see you back here next Thursday, 12 noon. Thank you all so much. We really, really appreciate you guys taking and sharing time with us here today.
Hey, thanks a ton, everybody. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jason.
Bye, everyone.
Great questions. Bye, guys.
Have a good week.
Bye now.